boy, have I got to tell you, it feels good to be making content again now with quality audio. Hello, today we're talking about 1086. To be honest, knowing that Oda is going into eye surgery, I was a little nervous about this chapter. Not because of any quality concern, but from the concern that Oda would leave a massive bombshell for the fandom before he goes on such a long break, and again, the break is well deserved. But I also don't put it past Oda to do something like, here's a huge bombshell and then be gone for 5 weeks. I'm happy to say that while we got some pretty big moments this chapter, nothing super cliffhangery happened. That is to say, at least we can pretty much put the pieces together from this flashback to know what we know now about Sabo and Vivi. Starting from the top, we have the chapter beginning on a direct continuation from 1085. We see Walpole booking it in 1085 with Vivi in his mouth. Now we see them both fully snuck onto a ship and coordinating with Morgans for an escape. I do love the added touch of Walpole actively denying the father questions to Vivi from Vivi. Whether it's out of fear for her hurt feelings or her response, it's nice to see Walpole be a bit more considerate and actually aware of what's going on here. We cut to Sabo and Bonnie both stowing away on their own respective ships, sneaking out of there, and Sabo thinking back about what Cobra's final words were. We go from this to the Gorosei talking amongst themselves about Sabo and his weird tie to fate when they suddenly get a call from Im telling them that they want to test the Mother Flame, aka Vegapunk's invention that he gifted the world government. The Gorosei and Im talk for a bit about which target to test it on, and obviously we know he picks Leloucia, or rather, they pick Leloucia. There's something worth calling out here that I'll touch on later, but it seems like Im picked Leloucia almost on a whim, and a nice little bit of subtlety and authoritarianism is, once that decision is made, then the Gorosei themselves give good contextual reasons for that decision after it's been made. It's not like it was the smartest decision objectively. That is what the decision is. Let's find some good reasons to justify it. We then get a great double page splash where each name is revealed for each member of the Gorosei, and again, Im is just looking extra creepy. We cut to the outside world to see some fallout from the reverie, but honestly it's a quick recap before we're back to Sabo in present time, giving this whole flashback recap to Iva and Dragon. Eva goes full Reddit theory poster and connects the dots with all the clues given, saying hey, Im is probably ancient, probably had the Ope Ope operation thing going on, blah 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 blah. This is very sus. Before we end the chapter, we get to meet our first official Figureland. That's what I'm gonna call them, or at least how I'm gonna pronounce them. The supreme commander of God's Knights and the former goddamn king of God Valley, Figureland Garling. He sentenced Don Quixote Miazjord, however you want to say it, to death, and is clearly not a fan of class traders. Yikes. Some important notes and stuff that I would just want to call out this chapter. Number one, Im does not call Vegapunk's invention a weapon. I know this is clearly a fan scan in English, so the official translation and again the actual Japanese is maybe more nuanced, but I do think it's interesting that Im themselves calls it an invention, not a weapon. To me, this feels like Vegapunk gave them something that they then used or manipulated and turned into a weapon, rather than he gave them a island buster. Continuing from that point, we have number two. We now know this is basically Saint Topman Valkyrie. Obviously TCB, if that's the translation you're reading from, kind of gave a little bit of context on why they chose these names and how they probably have puns. I like the idea of Valkyrie, so until proven otherwise, I'm going to use that. And Saint Topman says something really interesting here about how they're going to show Egghead, and if once they do, they might possibly reconsider their answer. I find this to be really telling, because if we know, the Gorosei know Vegapunk invented the Mother Flame, so for them there should be nothing that they can show to Vegapunk that he doesn't already know, so his response is within full bounds, unless they did something to the Mother Flame and they think once they show this off, Vegapunk's gonna change his mind because he wasn't expecting them to do something that made this a weapon. Otherwise, why would Saint Topman Valkyrie even say that, right? It's because there's a secret from Vegapunk involving this invention that they believe will tip the scales. Number three, Saint Marcus Mars saying at the will of its creator might be again another fan translation thing, and the jury's obviously still out until we get the official translation. All of that being said, I do think the dialogue is really interesting for those words specifically. The commonly accepted theory that I've seen is that obviously the Celestial Dragons, their families, the original 20 and Eam, changed the world to take control of it. I wonder if this is just another confirmation that this like actual design of the world, the actual creation of the 4 seas, the red line, the grand line that circumvents the equator, I wonder if that means it's literally Eam's doing in their designed plan, or if Saint Marcus just means like, you know, you're the top dog, so whatever you say goes. But I find the use of the term creator really interesting. It feels very telling, because honestly, if you're a totalitarian government creating a scenario where virtually no lands could unite, pretty sweet deal to colonize that. I can't tell if the Mother Flame just has a range limit, if Eam himself, theyselves, have a range limit, or if they just really wanted to see it up close. But the choice of Luluzia, just because of his proximity, I will say was fairly creepy. I might make a vid just about this, but the Gorosei names are obviously full of really interesting tidbits. For me, the most shocking was Saint Ethan Baron v Nosturo being the goddamn accountant. It honestly made me laugh a little bit. Again, there's a lot to say, a lot of wild speculation, but it feels like each Gorosei member having dominion over a type of thing. At least to me, the common thread seems to be forms of governmental oppression and control. What I mean by that is agriculture could be seen as control of the food, control of the livestock, control of the settlements, the things societies are actually built on. You have the Dominion finance, which can control taxes, poverty, uphold class structures, create like class warfare amongst the lower classes through layers of poverty. Then you have justice, which honestly just sounds like upholding the will of the law, using the law as this cudgel against people who either don't understand it or aren't fully equipped, or you just make laws to justify whatever actions through the government, kind of wash it that way. We then also have environmental as a dominion, which as far as I'm concerned could be several things. It could just mean generic sciences, but I'd be really curious to see if this meant sea kings and the sea and specific creatures on islands or dinosaurs or what have you. I'm curious what the environment really means in One Piece, to have an environment warrior. Like, what does that mean? And then obviously St. J. Garcia has defense sciences, which to me sounds a lot like the Marines. It feels like if this is the pattern that this is going with, the oppressive system that Jay Garcia has control over would be the military industrial complex, the police force, which then ties into why Kizaru is waiting hand and foot on Jay Garcia, other than, you know, the fact that they're the Gorosei, but why this specific member. It's likely, again, if these are all just wild assumptions, if it is a Dominion, the defense sciences are likely police, which would make St. J. Garcia Kizaru's direct boss. Another important call out, number 6, Ass Crocodile also has a scar across their face. Unbelievable brand consistency. You do not get that anywhere else. That attention to detail from anyone but Vegapunk. Probably chopped that kid's hand, gave them a little kid hook. You know, people gotta recognize this is Crocodile. You can't smoke your too little. How about we cut your face? Maybe they chop off his arm. Real curious to see how far they went with mimicking that, because obviously someone gave S. Flamingo the glasses, so, you know, there's clearly someone choosing to make the little versions of the big guys. Number 7, I find this really interesting. Dragon confirms he knew about ancient weapons already. Not that it was some sort of secret or theory, whether he knew or not, but I do think it's interesting that it's Robin to be the one that confirms it for him, presumably over the time scale. To me, this just means that obviously the poneglyphs are not in Dragon's hands. He doesn't have someone who could read them. Obviously, it'd be very difficult to transport them since no one really can. And rubbings would be more or less useless for the revolutionaries since, again, no one could read them. The whole man marked by flames on a ship was already a pretty unlikely to be Dragon, but now this feels extra proof that it's just not Dragon, because again, what would be the entire purpose of poneglyphs you can't read or defending them? It feels like there's something missing. Last important note before I give my own thoughts. Saint Figurlin Garling, more like Saint Pepsi, am I right? No joke, this, as far as I'm concerned, confirms NL is back in the picture. The moon is back in play. The infinite verse Well, what did I think of the chapter? Honestly, I thought the chapter was pretty good. I'm glad we got like what feels like a downbeat or an ending to the Reverie info dump. It feels nice that we got here, especially with the 5-week-long break. I was worried Oda is just going to give us the craziest chapter on his return, because I honestly was expecting a very like blue balls, here's this ultra cliffhanger, massive info dump, questions being raised kind of chapter, and then just cut away. And the fact we actually finished Sabo's flashback may be indicative of the rest of the final saga. We may be getting a lot less cutaways and more here's the answers, here's the gap fills. I don't know, I'm speculating. This chapter itself, just this chapter, really fun. Glad we got a God's Night introduction. We got some God Valley tease info, which is crazy. We learned that Goro says names. There's a lot of stuff that's really good to take away from this chapter. Again, Oda's just been killing it for a long time now, but especially he's been on a crazy hot streak. I'm honestly very excited to see what he comes up with when he comes back, or what is the incident at Egghead, but again, we'll all see. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. There's going to be more content coming throughout the week, especially as I got my new mic equipment. It now sounds much better, so I can record more consistently, more frequently. Upcoming videos, I'll be working on a Nana manga video that should be coming out fairly soon, and I'm working on a children's series of videos. Not necessarily for kids, but about why children's literature kind of sometimes has this weird edge. What happened to that edge more consistently in mainstream children's literature, and how it changed over time. And honestly, that subject just kind of exploded. But that's all for now. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment. What did you guys think of this chapter? Did you like it? What are the kind of theories you took away from it? I'd love to understand what everyone's kind of thinking. And if you're so inclined, please make sure to follow the Patreon. Thanks so much. Glad to see you. Hope to be seeing more of you soon.